My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. Today, I have a guest talking to me from all the way from over in Australia. Her name is Rubi Balasingam. And she's an actress slash writer, and she's had roles in projects like Lions and Rogers, Jack Irish, and Improv Sessions. I'm super excited to kind of share her story, especially since my best friend is an actor as well. But I'm very curious to kind of get Ruby's perspective, being an actress slash writer based in Australia, which isn't as much of a hotbed for acting. So without further ado, I'll let kind of Ruby introduce kind of herself, maybe tell us a bit about your upbringing and kind of how that sparked your love of film slash acting slash writing.
Okay, hi, I'm Ruby, and yeah, pretty much what you said, actor and screenwriter from Melbourne, Australia. I had a really typical immigrant upbringing. Mum and dad are first generation Aussies, and they came, I think, in 89. So it wasn't very popular for South Asians to be in Melbourne yet when they got here. So they had a lot of adjusting to do. And I was born in the mid 90s and they still hadn't really adjusted to Australia by then. So I had a lot of sort of dual culture growing up. They didn't understand how, TV in Australia really worked. So they didn't really let me watch very much of it except for like the Teletubbies when I was a kid.
Yes.
But at the same time, they would put on like Tamil movies all night. And somehow they'd be like, oh, you can't watch The Simpsons because it's really lewd. But, have this Tamil must film with like people beating each other up all night. And I was like, okay.
Actually, I noticed in Tamil films as well. I didn't realize this until I got older, until the subtitles showed up under the songs. I always thought these songs were innocent. Then I read the subtitles. It was like, deflower me. It's like, my parents are gone. Come over. We'll have some fun. I was like, oh my gosh. I was singing along with these songs with my parents. And they didn't let me watch like, Titanic, which had, well, they didn't know that I watched it, but like, that nude scene where like she's getting painted.
Yeah.
But I'm listening and like repeating these songs. But anyways, it's just funny that you said that. So
No, it is. It's absolutely true because when you grow up, you're like, so I couldn't watch The Simpsons, but like somebody getting stabbed 55 times really dramatically is really okay.
yeah.
And all those really hypersexual songs that don't sound hypersexual at all. You're like, oh yeah, this is really upbeat. And then you look at the subtitles and you're like, not appropriate at all.
Yeah. Do you have any siblings or are you an only child?
Yeah, I have one big brother. He's actually 10 years older than me. I was what they call the accident. And he's very conventional. He got, all the high marks and he got the big office job and has the wife and, settled down in his nice house with his nice car. And mum and dad are like, look at our son. And here's our daughter.
That's awesome. Oh, I mean, I think the whole conventional path to success or what success looks like is definitely changed. I mean, to each their own. I think if having the nice car, the nice house makes you happy, so be it. But there's definitely different paths to success. So, and I want to kind of get into obviously your journey as a writer slash like actor or actress. I know that you, like in the TC interview, when you kind of wrote one of your answers, it sounded very familiar to my friends when he started getting into writing and directing, and I asked him why. And I think one of the things you also said was, instead of waiting for that role that's right for you to kind of show up, which is kind of out of your control, you're like, I want to write stories because there's not a lot of people that look like me in the writers' rooms writing these stories for people like me. So if I write the stories, maybe I can kind of express myself or tell my story through, if I'm not playing that character, at least somebody's playing that character is still like kind of living out my story.
Oh yeah. I think it was like 2018, I think. I just got like my big TV show role and I was expecting to get another one. Like there would be another one. And I think I did over 30 auditions and they were all really tiring because I was like the lawyer, then I was the doctor, then I was like the nurse, and then I was the accountant, and I was getting really, really tired of it. So I think I hit that point where I just had the realization that these things are out of our control as actors. You really have to take whatever's given to you at the end of the day, and you're supposed to be grateful for it as well, which is the other really annoying thing. You're supposed to be like, ah, yes, this Indian role that some random white person wrote, that I'm supposed to be like, oh my God, thank you so much for having me. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Lawyer 55. Thank you. That's great. And so I got really fed up, and because I love doing comedy, and that's what I did when I was doing theatre when I started out. And in Australia, there's just no comedy for South Asians unless you're playing like Apu from The Simpsons. Like you have to be that level to even be considered. So I got really frustrated and started doing it myself. And your friend was right. It's like the only liberating way to take any control of your career.
I mean, I know it's kind of slowly changing, but still, for the most part, I don't know if you watch. There's a Canadian show called Kim's Convenience. Have you heard of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So love the show, and part of the reason the show got canceled, if you kind of read about it, is um, the main person who created the show. I think he was Korean. He left the show because he was just tired of like writing for that show, but they couldn't continue the show. They said because without him, but you know, for whatever reason, the other writers that were all, I think, predominantly Caucasian, I guess, felt like they couldn't write that story, or but they never thought of bringing in like a Korean, like Korean writers who can kind of identify with the characters in that show and continue kind of that show. But anyways, I just thought that was kind of interesting. So uh, when you kind of made that shift from, you know, taking acting as a passion and prospectively kind of turning it into a career, or like more of something that you would focus more of your time on, number one, I guess, how did your parents react, or did they even notice that change? And number two was um, finding an agent. Obviously, that kind of signals it as well. Tell us a bit about that as well.
I didn't tell my parents straight away. I think you shouldn't do that because, in regards to my parents, they don't know how the industry works. So if I had told them, they would have expected some level of success up front because they're their parents and they really want high achieving or nothing, no matter what it is. So I think I finished uni, I got a better agent, and you have to work your way up with agents. I had a really, really low tier agent to start off with, but that was a really good idea because I learned a lot just by asking them a slew of questions about how everything worked. What do I need to do? Who do I need to meet? Should I email them? Do you email them? And at the time, I got like one audition every 6 months, but I was also early in my uni, so I didn't want too many because I would have probably failed everything. And what ended up happening was that from that agent, got another agent that was slightly better. And from that slightly better agent, another agent that was slightly higher up the tier, to my current agent who has international contacts, and we're getting like stuff, well, pre-COVID, stuff from like the US coming through. And that would be great. But I feel like people don't realize that you have to work your way up the ladder when it comes to an agent. You can't just jump in and be like, I'm going to get the best agent in the country. That's not, they don't know you. That's not how that's going to work. And I didn't tell any of this to my parents. I just did it quietly on the side. And if I had an audition, I'd tell them that, oh, someone, asked me to come and audition for this part somewhere. Like I'd do it vaguely, like, oh, someone, asked me to come and, do an audition for this part. And they'd be like, oh, okay. Because I was doing a drama and writing degree. So they were expecting me to get like a job in a publishing house or something, not necessarily as an actor, but they understood that, oh, she's making, like, it's a side hustle. She's making money on the side. And then Jack Irish happened and I auditioned from home and I didn't even think I was going to get the part, but then I got the part. And now I had to tell my parents that I had to be on set for like a full week. And I had to like explain to them that I'm actually making money. It's a TV show for the ABC. Like, this is how it's going. It's a big show. They have a lot of money. It's legit. Like, it's not a scam, because they were always like, oh, it's such a scam. Like, why would they want you to do something? It's got to be a scam. And I was like, no, I don't think so. So when I told them, they still didn't get it. They were like, oh, okay, sure, go ahead. You do you. And then about 6 months later, it was on TV. So I sat them down in front of the TV and I had to explain to them, it's an actual TV show that's on the TV. Like, it's a legit thing. You can actually see it right here on the TV. And then I remember playing it, and like I literally get brutally, like spoilers alert, murdered in the first scene. And my dad was shocked and my mum started laughing. And I remember just being like, this is not the response I thought we were going to have, but okay, that's all right, we'll go with it. And I remember every week when a new episode would come up, a different member of my family would suddenly have heard about it from one of my parents and come and watched. And then after the whole series had aired, I went to the temple for like a festival, and everybody knew about it. Everybody had been watching it because my parents hadn't kept quiet about it. They just told everyone, my kid's on TV. You should check this out this weekend. Go check it, go take a look. And I was shocked at how lovely everyone was after that. And since then, I think they didn't understand why I wasn't continuously getting work. I don't think they understood that it's not really a level playing field.
Mhm.
And if I tried to explain that, oh, it's just a little bit difficult because, if I go for an audition that says open ethnicities, they're not going to cast a brown person
Mhm. Yeah.
unless it's actually a role for a brown person. There's no way in hell. So it was too hard to explain to them that, I have an agent, he's doing his best, I'm giving it a good go. If it happens, it'll happen. If not, that's okay. Because they don't understand the difference between an audition and a job interview,
Mm.
is sort of the way I got it. They don't understand that, your height, what you look like, are they casting a family? Like, just did your accent slip for like less than 1 second? Oh no, too bad. Or, is the director just looking for someone else? They don't get that. So it's hard to explain to them why you're not continuously being successful. But at the same time, because I've been doing it for so long now, they've kind of just gone, oh, well, she's doing what she's doing. She
Yeah.
seems to be happy. And, we're not complaining as long as she's got like enough money in the bank for now.
Yeah, in the acting world, they have like this saying that everybody is like a 10 or 15-year old kind of overnight success. And it's kind of a running joke where like outside of a few people that got very fortunate and, good for them, but most people like they kind of had to really do different projects and kind of just get the right break in order to kind of start that path towards being known or getting good roles like 10 years later. Is that
Oh,
something kind of
yeah.
that you've seen as well?
Yeah, I think it would be great if more people actually talked about it, about what it took for them to get, all the way to where they are. I don't think many, especially POC actors, talk about, being left outside the audition room, not making it in, stuff like that. They don't talk about that. They like to talk about, why representation matters. But I think it's super important to say it took some serious effort to get even this far,
Yeah.
and it's going to take even more effort to get further. And it really does depend because some actors, they walk into their first audition, they nail it. Some actors don't even audition, they're picked up off the side of the road. Some people, you're fortunate enough to be born into a family full of directors and suddenly you've got it made. And some of us have to climb our way up. And I think it's important to just focus on your own journey because it can get really, really, really hard if you go, why aren't I as lucky as other people? Like
And
if you go down that path.
how do you react like when you get auditions or you get to stages where like you're kind of in like the next stage or like almost the final round and it's a role that could potentially kind of one up your trajectory of like where you could possibly land, like that role that can land you the next big role. How do you kind of, I know in acting it's quite common where like you're like the runner up, you're almost there, but it happens quite a bit. And then like how do you deal with that repeated rejection even though like you're right there? How do you motivate yourself to keep showing up for these auditions even though like you just missed out each time?
That's actually a really good question. I would say
This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me.
maybe it's me being a martial artist, but I always think it's like a long fight. You're in round one, you've lost. Go on to round two, you're going to lose again. Keep going because you have to see it to the end. And I am quite a naturally resilient person. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten this far. But for me personally, it's my mum's old saying of it all happens for a reason. And, she equates it to God and, your horoscope and, you know, whatever Rasi Palin is going on right now. Like that's how she'll sit there and be like, your horoscope said that, it'll come very soon. And I'm like, okay. If you're putting it that way, I'm just gonna take it all happens for a reason. And I've discovered that if you realize that it really is for the better, that maybe you probably wouldn't have been the right person for the role, it's easier to do, but you have to let yourself be sad about it. You can't just be like, oh, I'm fine. You have to be like, no, I'm going to be sad about the fact and frustrated that I didn't get the part, that, all of these ideas of what I thought I could do aren't going to happen. And if you let yourself feel all of the sad things, then you can pretty easily transition to focusing on the next thing.
What's your coping mechanism? For me, when something sad happens, I eat sugar, and then it just makes me feel good for like an hour or so. Then I can kind of refocus. Like, how do you kind of cope?
I tend to I go to either martial arts or ballet, because they require you to not think about anything else for that hour and a half. Otherwise you will get punched in the face. So it's really good to be like, I need to go like vent my frustrations on this punching bag and then I'll be feeling a bit better. Or I like to hang out with my normal friends, non-actor friends who have 9 to 5s and are really annoyed about their washing machine not working. So they can give you a bit of perspective, because I feel like as soon as you have a bit of perspective, you can sort yourself out really easily. And I feel like if I have too many actor friends, it becomes very much a sob party. Like we all just end up in the same room of, oh, I'm so sad, I'm so depressed, how are you? Oh, you're sad and depressed as well? Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas if you meet up with like a friend who's just like in an office job, who's really, really properly sad and depressed about like working a 9 to 5, you could be like, you know what, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. I'm not in a cubicle somewhere.
So your 9 to 5 friends don't know that you leverage them for their sadder existence.
I think they do the same to me as well. Like sometimes they'll just be like, how does it feel? And I'm like, this is what we have friends for. We're all here to like swap suffering cards and be like, this is giving me a bit of perspective. Here, take mine. And then they'll stop complaining. They'll stop complaining about their washing machine being broken when they realize you didn't get that part.
I think you kind of nailed something when you said perspective, because sometimes like human beings, we're like so self-absorbed. We think any of our problems, like even something minor, is kind of the end of the world. I know sometimes I kind of overblow like my own problems, but then I look at other people that actually have like real difficulty, like much harder challenges. Like I have a lot of what's the word, privilege, I guess, in a way. I could have easily been in another country or not made it to Canada, or like you're in Australia. So I think you kind of nailed it with perspective. So that's kind of a great coping technique.
It is, because even if you think of other actors, there are actors out there who don't even have an agent. Yep. And you got the chance to at least be in front of these people.
Yes.
And, if the second you get a bit of perspective, things tend to look a little bit less dramatic. Because we do get a bit, spotlight on me, woe is me, I'm so sad, me. And then suddenly you're like, actually, no, it's actually pretty okay.
I know we live in kind of like almost this post-COVID world, and hopefully things kind of get back to normal, especially traveling wise. But living in Australia, like I said, it's not known for kind of being an acting center. Maybe that's changing. I'm not sure. But have you ever thought about kind of eventually maybe making the move to like somewhere like the UK or like the US to pursue acting more seriously? Or like, is that something you're just like, I don't want to take that risk just yet?
I was going to back in like 2019. There's a lot of like bridging scholarships and stuff between Australia and the like LA market. And I remember everyone telling me to apply for all these scholarships, because basically what they're looking for is up and coming, more or less diverse actors who would make it over there. And COVID hit, and that did put a spanner in all of the works. But what I really quickly realized, and thankfully my agent explained this to me, is that it's all about who you know if you go overseas. And currently, because of the climate of the world, even his contacts have all changed, because during COVID, because the industry shut down, everybody quit. They moved jobs. They their companies took this chance to fire them in some cases. It was a massive shuffle for the industry. So now it becomes, do I stay here where it's, a bit safer where my support system is, or do I venture out into a possibly unsafe space for, especially health-wise, for someone as young as me? And the other thing is that in Australia, we're now, probably because COVID was so under control over here, we have all these massive US productions showing up. We had Thor 4. There's La Brea shooting like literally around the corner from me. And all of these massive productions just suddenly rocked up on our shores and were like, local actors, please. And you're like, oh, hello, that's me. But it still depends on whether or not they have any South Asians they need. For like, I think the last thing that they filmed that was martial arts based was Mortal Kombat was filming in Australia.
Oh, it shot
And I
in
remember
Australia. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it did in South Australia. And somebody flagged it to me. They said, oh, Mortal Kombat is filming. So I asked my agent, oh, do they need any martial artists? Because I'm for free and I'm right here and I'm not doing anything. And he let me know that they only wanted Asian martial artists. And I was like, yes, the old conundrum. And it's now gotten to that point where there's more international productions, but you're still not what they're looking for. And I don't know if that's going to change if I headed over to LA. Like, am I still not going to be what they're looking for? Like, how many auditions am I going to get? There's nothing set in stone. And especially when things like auditioning from home, self-taping exists. You can set up a camera and do it on your own from home. So I'd rather just do it when it's safe and I have like a plethora of contacts to make sure everything goes well, then set myself up for a bit of failure and then get my hopes up and things don't go right.
Got it. That makes sense. One thing as you were talking earlier, I forgot to kind of bring up was I've never been to Australia, and you kind of mentioned like Melbourne, like when your parents first settled, it was kind of hard for them to kind of adjust. What's the city like? Like, how would you describe Melbourne as a city? How would you describe the the Tamil community in Melbourne, or even just Australia in general?
There is a pretty big distinction between Melbourne and say Sydney and other places, because we're much more about the vibes around here. We're very like, arts and culture are huge. The food scene is huge. We're like, if I was going to describe it, I'd say we're in the middle of being like a very small scale London with a little bit of New York thrown in. Like, we're that sort of, I guess it's mostly because we're all part of the Commonwealth. So we have, British influences into our cities and architecture, but then we have like the new wave arts, fringe festivals coming in and stuff like that. So we're very cultured is the word I'd use for it. And the Tamil community is not as large in Melbourne as it is, say, in Sydney. If you headed to Sydney, you'd get a lot of Desi people working with other Desi people to make stuff. Whereas here, we're much less concentrated, and it's so much more rare to see like 6 or 7 South Asian creators in the same room. Whereas in Sydney, I've met like 6 or 7 in the same room and been like, oh, hello, you're all over here. And I think it's a good thing for me personally, being in a less concentrated area with less of a Tamil community, because my parents didn't get into the habit of comparing me with other people or going out to parties, because they just didn't happen that often. And I'm really glad my parents are slightly introverted, because they didn't feel the need to like parade me around and be like, oh, this is our daughter, this is what she does. And like the competition went down a lot. It was less about, what is everybody else's kids doing versus what my kid is doing, and more, you don't really know that many people, so you're going to have to assimilate on your own.
Got it. And a very important question for me when I look at a city is, if you want to get a good mutton roll or Tamil food, how long do you have to drive from your house to the closest place that had such food?
5 minutes.
Oh,
5
really?
minutes.
Oh, that's
Right around the
awesome. Okay.
corner. We're everywhere. And it's because I live in a very immigrant heavy area.
Okay, got it.
And I went to school in a very immigrant heavy area, that we're not the predominant immigrant group at all, but we are still heavy enough in numbers that there will be a good mutton roll right around the corner.
That's good to know.
And thank God for that. I'm really
I,
glad about that because I love them.
I'm curious. I was just curious because I always forget living in Toronto, especially growing up in Scarborough, which like is very like we are the like predominant like minority group.
Oh, I've visited. I
Oh, you
know.
visited. Okay, so you
Yeah, I
know. Okay,
visited. It was eye-opening. I was like, wow,
yeah.
everybody's here.
And like Tamil food is not just popular in the Tamil community. Like in Toronto, it's like there's a lot of cool Tamil people doing things that kind of are getting mainstream attention. So like I always like forget about that because like even in Scarborough, like where my parents are, there's a grocery store, like a normal grocery store, like every block, but every other block there's also a Tamil grocery store, which is
Oh my
like
God.
so like I feel like anybody that's like new to the country that's Tamil, they would feel very comfortable moving to Scarborough because like it feels like home or a bit of home. So I was just curious about like how Melbourne was, but it sounds somewhat similar, maybe on a smaller scale.
It's not as similar because I remember being very shocked about the amount of South Asians of all different like
Yes.
varieties and flavors, just like right down the road, because I have a lot of family in Canada. And I remember just going for a walk. I was like, oh my God, oh wow, everybody, every second person is
Yes.
so very brown. And, I was super shocked by, going through, what is it, Tim Hortons, the drive-through,
Yeah.
like the three cars in front of us were blasting like different types of Bollywood music, like Indian music. I was like, this one's Telugu, that one's playing Tamil music, one in front is playing like Punjab music. I was like,
Yeah.
what is going on? What is this town? That is not what you're going to see over here. Like, it's not that dense of
Mm.
one area with all these people, but you do sort of get that like vibe of, oh, hey, brown person. Like
Yes. Got it.
every now and again, like it's not as normal because I think 90% of my neighbors are Caucasian, like they're proper bogan Australian Aussies.
Got it.
And that's just how it goes. It'll be immigrant family surrounded by white people, but then another
So.
immigrant family down the road that you see when you go to take a dog for a walk and you're like, so, hi, how's it going? I
Yeah.
see your curry tree.
um, I think I think you kind of touched on this earlier, but your brother is kind of following the conventional path. He's, you're maybe your parents' golden child, and maybe you're the black sheep. I don't know. But in terms of the creative arts in the Tamil community, I know that obviously the creative arts is an important part of kind of our culture, but I always thought of it as more of something people are comfortable with, especially our parents, in like a recreational point of view. Like, oh, it's cool if you play the piano, do like I'm trying to think of like traditional dancing, all that stuff. It's cool if you do all that stuff on the side while you kind of hold down a normal job. But have you seen this notion start to change with yourself, like with your parents, or like with other people that you know that are South Asian or Tamil? Like this notion of it's okay to have a full-time job or like a full-time pursuit in the creative arts. Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you.
I would say that I think it is changing, and it is changing because we're becoming more visible. Like we're on TV more now. Even if it's just here, a Fijian Indian won MasterChef. And everybody was like, oh my good God, that just happened. Like everyone was super proud. We're not even Fijian Indians. And we were like over here giving the man a round of applause because that's visibility. And that visibility helps people understand that this is a viable world that we can actually thrive in. But at the same time, we have to understand that our parents are coming from a perspective of they don't want us to struggle at the end of the day. And to them, in a country that's so transactional as this one, it's really hard for them to be like equating your happiness to things that aren't monetary, if that makes sense.
Yep, that makes sense.
And for my parents, I think they realized with me, especially in my family, I've always been this way. Ever since I was a kid, that I'd be the one doing all the, those little kids who do the dances in the family parties. I was one of those kids. And like, I was the kid who would just go around and talk to everyone and want to like do all the things ever. So everyone was like, oh, she's an actor, that makes sense. But at the same time, the second I started doing screenwriting,
Mm.
My parents really, really accepted it a lot more because now it was in my hands. And my
Right.
mum was like, well, now it makes sense. Like you could actually make money from this because you're behind the scenes. Anything behind the scenes, I feel like they were like, oh, they don't need to know you're brown
Mm.
if you write this. Like they don't need to know. Nobody needs to know. Like you've got more of a chance of succeeding behind the scenes. And it's true, you do,
Like
because
Mindy
you're less
Kaling.
visible.
Well, like
Yeah.
Mindy Kaling, yeah,
Yeah. Like Mindy Kaling, because you're less visible. And that doesn't help solve the problem 100% unless you can get into the rooms and start changing things.
yeah. Hmm.
But the shift I've really seen is that as more people like me get more open about doing this job, our parents and the elders in our family can actually convince other people that it's not a bad idea. We can't say crap. I'm sorry. Young people cannot go up to an elder and be like, it's a good idea if you let your kid, you know, do that better than RTM Reel on
Oh yeah.
Insta. Like, it's okay if you let your kids do that. We can't tell them. But if our parents talk to them, suddenly
Hmm.
it's like, the elders are speaking. Better listen to the elders. And so the shift I saw is that people at my parents' age are now telling young parents that it's okay if your kid, you know, does literature or goes ahead and is doing a comedy show or, you know, wants to put like take their musical instrument to another level or they want to become a singer.
Hmm.
People like my parents, because their kids are starting to see some success, are going out there and being like, you know what, this is actually not such a bad idea, but we can't say it. That's what
Hmm.
I've discovered is that young people saying it doesn't go over very well, but the older people saying it works out pretty well and other people will listen.
So it's like we have to do Inception, kind of plant that idea that it's their idea and make them think it's their idea versus like, telling them, I get it.
Yeah, yeah, you have to be very subtle and be like, oh, wouldn't it be great if somebody could tell their daughter like them that their daughter can absolutely take that piano class? And my mum would be like, yes. And then suddenly she's talking to this auntie, and I'm like, yes.
You brought up another topic that I'm always curious about when I talk to creative folks, which is money. So you talked about obviously the uncertainty of being an actor, where obviously income is not a regular thing. Like you might get a spurt of it, and then like you might see a drought for a while. How do you fill in the gaps personally from in between jobs? I guess like acting gigs.
I am so glad I actually went to university and got myself a degree. Like my parents literally said that's the only thing they wanted me to do. They didn't care what degree it was, as long as I
Hmm.
went to university, mostly because they didn't get the chance to. So they were like,
Right.
you've got the opportunity to go to university. You should go to university. And I did a professional creative writing degree alongside a drama degree. And then I did a master's in secondary teaching. And the goal was if I struggle more than I can financially like allow for as an actor, then I will fall back on teaching or maybe I'll fall back on writing.
Mm.
And unfortunately in Australia, if you want to be a teacher, it's actually surprisingly expensive. You need to get like registrations and just sit an exam and stuff like that. And there are certain amounts of rules of the hours you have to work, even if you're like a substitute teacher, or if you're working super part-time. So I decided that that wasn't going to work out very well. And I did content writing. So I just became a freelancer and accidentally became top rated and now have to like field people and be like, I'm sorry, I can't do your writing job. I've got an audition. Like, I can't do your writing job. I booked a gig and it's a week of my life and I can't do it anymore. Like I've gotten to the point where one is slightly starting to be phased out now for the other. And that's the goal. The goal is to phase out the side hustle for the main hustle.
Hmm.
And I feel like it is realistic for actors to have a side hustle. You need to have one. And I think the more we talk about it being something that is a necessity, the less like guilt you'll feel about not putting 100% of your time into your craft. Because you got to eat at the end of the
Yeah.
day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you have to be feasible about these things and you have to go out and live. I keep telling really new young actors this. You have to live. You can't be like 100% of the time trying your best to make it in the industry. You have to be a three-dimensional person at the end of the day. So you have to go out and experience life for other things to happen.
Yeah. I think the starving artist concept sounds sexy, but it's not feasible.
Oh no, eat, please. Put some money on the table so you can have nice things, and that'll help sort of cushion the blow of not getting that big role with the big bucks. Because
Mm.
you'll be like, oh, it's okay, I've still got, what I need.
No, that's a good point. What is your relationship with money like? How do you view money?
I think this is really interesting because there's a massive difference between how I view money and how my parents view money. So my parents see it as very, very important, like tier one necessary, like really necessary, because obviously they had nothing when they came here. So that's what they built their lives on, is making money. And what I've realized is that that's not the life they wanted for me. As soon as they realized that I could work from home and not run to the office and like have to deal with traffic and, didn't have to, deal with other people in an office setting, they started realizing that that's probably how I like it better and it's what works for me. And for me personally, I don't hold it as the most important thing in the world. And that's just the way I feel. Like, I'm not a transactional person where I'm going to be like, oh, I have to make this much money for that much things to happen. But I do believe that acting is a business. So I feel like if I'm not making the money back that I'm investing, then there's no use in, also, like, it's not really that there's no use, it's more that something's gone wrong along the
Mm.
way. So from the beginning, I've always been, if I'm spending X amount of money on new photos, X amount of money on, equipment to film from home, then I have to be making that money back and then some to make it justifiable in terms of what I'm spending. And that is just, I think that's just best practice. That's just what I was told as a very young baby actor. Ruby was told by her very first agent that you have to not spend more than you make as an actor, because at that point it becomes wasteful in terms of how much money you have. So I'd say I don't hold it as the most important thing, but I'm definitely aware of making it something that I can keep making and not lose any money on, because there are certain actors I know who will get an audition and then do a $1,000 training session for that audition, and then they don't book it and now they've wasted money. So I'm trying not to get to that level of, expenditure as it was.
When you say, I mean, you have certain money goals. Do you have like fixed money goals, or like do you like, are you thinking about investing or any of that right now, or is it strictly focusing on acting, and once more money comes in, you'll think about things like investing and whatever else comes with that, like whether it's like property or stocks or planning for the future in that way?
I think the thing of being in this industry is the future as it is, especially post COVID, you have no idea what's going to go down.
Mm.
Like, you're just like, we've already had one semi-apocalyptic problem. Like, when's the next one turning up? And I've realized that the more I think about the long-term future, the more anxious I get personally. I'm like, oh my God, what if I want to, like, get married one day? How's that going to go down? I have like no money, like freaking out. And to stop myself from going into that, freak out level of anxiety of, will I ever be able to own a house? Like, that anxious level. What I do is I just think of the immediate long term. So end of this year is as far forward as I'm going to think.
Mm.
And then if any money comes my way or things start going really, really well, then I'm going to really have to need some help, because I know nothing about investments or properties or stocks or any of that. I am a creative. You give me a graph with numbers on it, I'm going to probably feel a bit nauseous. So I always, like, people do ask me a lot, what happens if you make some money? And I'm always like, I will call my big brother, because he is really, really good with that sort of stuff. He is the analytical brains in this family. I will call the right people for the job. Plus, I'm South Asian. I have cousins that are accountants. I will give people I need to call a call.
Good point. Yeah. What keeps you going? Like, what's your why?
That's actually a really good question. I think my why is that I don't want to live a life that's not 110% what I want it to be. If you know what I mean. I'm going to exist in the world. I want to exist on my own terms, which is super hard if you're South Asian, because
Mhm.
your terms are everybody's business. So, so you have people constantly trying to tell you how to live. But I feel like as long as I'm 110% happy with my life, even if it's not 110% successful, then it's okay. And anything I have control over, I tend to take control over, whether that be like how I dress or how I do my hair or, just who I meet, who I'm friends with, things that I have control over, I tend to keep control over, so that things that I don't have control over, like acting, I can do my best to just let that happen as it has to happen.
What's an insecurity that you have?
I would say the big one is that at the moment, I'm getting to the point where I'm getting into these rooms, like the writers' rooms and the rooms with the big people in it. The current insecurity I'm having is, could there be somebody better standing in my shoes instead of me? Is there a better South Asian out there who could tell this story than me? Am I the right person for the job? And that is not the best insecurity in the world to have, because the truth is that only you can tell the stories you want to tell. You can't substitute yourself in these situations. But as a human being, you go through oh my God, I'm in this big room with these big people and I shouldn't be here. Like, what if there's somebody else who's better than me who could be in this room and I'm just taking this opportunity from them? Like, you have that feeling of I'm not good enough.
Imposter
And
syndrome.
yeah, it's imposter syndrome, but it's not the same way that I think non-POC people think of imposter syndrome. This is like a systematic thing of you just not having seen anyone who looks like you in that room. Because when you walk into the room, you're faced with like all the Caucasians ever. And you're just like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm here talking about a fully South Asian production and I feel very small. Like, it's that small feeling. I don't even know if there's got a name for it, but it's when you feel really, really small for no good reason. And I don't like it.
Has anybody ever said something to you kind of in the acting slash writing world that's made you kind of been like, want to punch them, or, like you're just shocked that they actually said that? Maybe they're just so like
Oh,
stupid or not stupid.
wow.
Yeah, oblivious. Sorry.
Yeah. My God. So many times. And I am like such a pacifist despite being a martial artist. Like, the first thing we're taught is how not to start a fight. So in my head, I'm like, count to 10 in Cantonese, take a deep breath, think of inner peace, like, don't beat them up. I think it was my very first big commercial that I did. Like, I got a big ad and I was super excited because it was a big company and I was going to be in an ad. And I don't know if you know this or not, but ads actually make more money for actors than TV show roles do, because you need to be paid for usage. So you're getting a bigger paycheck for doing a lot less work. The only downside is you can't do another ad for a competitor for the next 3 years. So that's how that works. So I was really excited because it was a massive paycheck. It was my first big TV commercial. And I walked in to the makeup artist room, and immediately the makeup artist turned around to me and she said, well, why are you here? And I was like, oh, I'm an actor. Like, obviously they told me to be here. And she was like, no, but why would you be here? Like, you look
Wow.
intelligent. She was like, you seem intelligent to me. I don't know why you're doing this. And I was like, we just met. I was like, the audacity. I was like, sweetie, the audacity is skyrocketing. And she was like in her mid-50s. I was like, are you kidding me? And I remember the entire production was just full of people who couldn't wrap their heads around what I was doing in the room. There was no thank you for coming. There was no, so excited to meet you. There was no so glad we could find you for the role. It was very much a why are you here mentality for the entire shoot. And I remember that I went home and I was just like, oh, I feel the urge to punch something. Like, I'm like full of unnecessary rage. And then I realized that is just a very small percentage of the people who you're going to meet, because after that point, I don't think I ever met anyone that vocally rude to me. There were some microaggressions, like especially when you're going to see a casting director for a callback and the casting director likes you, but you can tell that none of the creative team likes you very much. And, the audition is going all wrong and there's bad vibes in the room. And that's a microaggression, because no one's going to come out and say, you're a little bit too brown. Like no one's going to say that out loud, but you can tell they're thinking it.
Mm-hmm.
But, in terms of like really overt aggression, it was that one time. And then I never saw them again. And I'm really glad for it, because I think I would have said something if they kept on going with that whole, why are you here vibe. And then I realized another big thing is that the why are you here question, people are thinking it even if they're not saying it out loud. They're definitely thinking it, and you can tell that they're thinking it. And that is also another one of those microaggressions where you're like, I know you're thinking, what are you doing in this room?
Yep.
And you just have to kind of keep going. You have to ignore it and be like, I deserve to be here. Like I get spiteful. So whenever someone is thinking that about me and I can tell, I get really petty. And I'm like, well, now because you're thinking that, I'm just going to assume that I own this whole building. Like that's my mentality. As soon as somebody gets slightly microaggressive with me, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to act like I am the queen of this entire building. Bow down before me. And that's why I think if I get into these rooms and people are being super nice to me, I start to feel smaller, because I feel like I don't need to like prove myself, but internally I'm like thinking of how do I prove myself. Whereas if somebody is slightly microaggressive to me for some reason, my confidence skyrockets. I don't know what that is about me, but
I think
it's just
I
how
think
I
that
am.
means you're competitive.
I think that does mean I'm competitive, yeah.
Like a lot of great like athletes, like Jordan, they made up things that they thought people were saying about them just to kind of experience that confidence that you're talking about, that increasing confidence. So
Oh,
instead of,
wow.
so it sounds like you have an athlete's mind when it comes to when you see a microaggression. Just even if they don't think it, you're just like, all right, how do I,
I
you
think I
know,
need to get into the habit of just making up what they're saying about me so I can get to the mindset of I'm just going to beat this out of the park because
ex-
yeah, I
that's
didn't
what
think
you got to
about that. I
do.
had no idea.
Yeah, when you're describing it, I was like, wait, like that's how I think. Like when I play sports, like that's what I think. Like I just make up stuff that that person's like thinking that I suck. So then I just play better, or like I'm more aggressive, or so that's what I thought of right away.
Wow, I better start doing that then.
We talked a lot about work, and I don't want to get you more angry. So why don't we focus on what you do outside of work? Like, what do you like to do for fun? Money can be hard to come by, but here is a $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free?
So I do martial arts and ballet, and that's good because I primarily work from home.
Hmm.
Even as an actor nowadays, we're auditioning everything from home. So if I didn't go out and do things that were slightly social, I would be all by myself and go a bit loopy. So
Hmm.
it's nice to have like sort of support settings outside of your career. Like ballet has nothing to do with, well, it could have something to do with my career, but it doesn't. I don't link them together. Same with martial arts. And these are people I've known for almost, I think it's 11 years of doing martial arts. So these are people I've known since I was a literal teenager.
Hmm.
And that means that you have a great support network no matter what. And you feel like nobody cares what your job is. You're just there to have a bit of fun.
Hmm.
And then outside of those, I'm a foodie. I like food. I like to go out with my friends to nice places to eat.
Hmm.
I like to go to museums. I like to go to libraries. I like to walk the dog. I like things that, you can do completely by yourself, because I feel like we need to sort of hang out on our own a little bit.
Would you say that you lean towards the introverted side or extroverted, or like somewhere in the middle?
I used to be an extrovert, and it was mainly because I was in the performing arts and I knew how to make people laugh. So I would just make friends everywhere, because I discovered that if you make someone laugh, they tend to like to hang around you a bit more. But as I transitioned into acting full time and making less money, I discovered that you have to stay home a bit more. So I discovered that I have the capacity to be a little bit more introverted and stay home and be with myself. And now, post like lockdowns and COVID and stuff, I think I've become way more introverted. I've become much more of a I'd like to stay home if that's okay, because I've
Mm,
made it my safe space.
mm.
So now it's very strange that I've gone from very extroverted to much less, but I think that's also just growing up as well. and I can't wait to see what future Ruby is like. I wonder if she'll be more extroverted.
I feel like I used to be more extroverted, but I would say I think thinking back, I think I could be extroverted for like 2, 3 hours, and then I just need to be by myself. So I think I tend more to be introverted, but people think I'm extroverted. But it's because when they see me, I'm like extroverted, but then they don't know that immediately after I'm like I need to like go home and not speak to anybody. So uh, yeah, so I'm always
I
curious
love
about it.
that.
Personal legacy. How would you want to be described by your friends and family?
That's a question, isn't it? I think I'd want them to remember if I made them laugh. And I think that's just because that's how I am.
Hmm,
If you've had a good time, then I know that we're going pretty well. And I don't want to leave anyone feeling like they should have sort of, how do I put this? I don't want to leave anyone thinking that they should have regretted knowing me, if that makes sense.
hmm.
Even if we're not friends anymore, I don't want you to regret having known me. Sort of, yeah, I think that's about it.
On the topic of friendships, this is like a quick side note. How do you have you seen your friendships evolve or change over time in the sense that like people that used to be like good friends with or friends with are you now like not friends with, and like what are some of the reasons why friendships have changed in your life?
I think the big one is, you know, that transitional period from being a teenager to being an adult when you
Mm,
realize what sort of person you want to be. I lost quite a few friends within that time frame of me realizing that I was this sort of person, and then me also realizing that they weren't that sort of person.
mm,
And I'm not one to just go up to one of my friends and be like, "We're not friends anymore, goodbye."
yeah,
I kind of just let them go and let them decide if they want to stay being my friends or not. And usually they get the point and then they meet other people and it's okay.
mm,
And I think the friendships that have lasted for me are the people who, despite all of our differences, can accept them
mm,
and just go, we're different people, but I like hanging out with you. So let's
mm,
hang out. And I'm very much someone who sort of expects to get as much as I give. So I'm not going to be the Mother Teresa in a friendship and be
yeah.
like, here, I'll give and I won't get anything in return. I'm one of those people who's like, I want some back. So if that's the basis of any friendship, I think is just, you know,
It's like an important quality for you in terms of like a friend. Is it a friend like is physically or not physically like meeting up or like hanging out, is that an important component? Is like yeah, like what are the characteristics that make up like a good friend for you?
I think it used to be the whole meeting up thing
Mm,
pre-COVID. It was very much like, oh, we like, you know, you have to want to hang out with me as much as I want to hang out with you. And then that went downhill really fast. And and it shifted to being a bit more of people who are constant. I have friends who are in, you know, Madrid and I don't see them very often, but they're still very constant in that if they see me being happy or they see something good happening in my life, they will reach out to say congratulations.
mm,
You know, they'll comment on, you know, random Instagram stories I've posted and they're always there. Like you can tell that they're there and they've got an eye on you, even if you're not talking every single day. And that sort of feeling of them being there constantly, even if they're not physically constantly in the space with you, that is what I think makes a really good friendship is just consistency and constance, basically.
mm. Okay, great answer. What's like a new belief, behavior, habit that you've kind of taken on that's improved your life?
Oh my God, this has just been happening for like the last 3 weeks. But I've made a very conscious decision to start sort of allowing myself to transition into grown up Ruby. I
Mm,
don't know if that makes any sense, but I've hit past the early 20s into the mid 20s where I've realized that my wardrobe is full of clothes that 19-year-old Ruby bought that I don't wear anymore. Like,
mhm.
you know, all of the things that are like things that I thought old people did, like indoor plants. I want to do them now. So, you know, should I embrace that or should I be like, oh no, that's what I thought grandmas did? Like I thought grandmas had ferns in their houses. I didn't know that like I didn't know mid 20s Ruby would be like, I really want an indoor plant. So what I've decided to do is actually allow myself to become the person really young Ruby thought was really sad. Like, she would have been ashamed, but I've sort of decided that, you know what? I need to clean out my wardrobe and buy adult clothes that cost more than $5 from like the local shops. And I probably, if I want indoor plants, I should have indoor plants, and I shouldn't care that it's not so much as what other people are going to think of me. For some reason in my own brain, it's what 19-year-old Ruby would have thought of me.
Mm.
You know, it's what younger me would have said about me now. And for some reason, I'm like, stop thinking about younger you. She's gone. Live your life. You're this age right now. You should act like you want to act. And that's a weird thing to get into, like, psychologically, but that's just how I am. So I've gone like talking to younger Ruby and telling her to stay in her lane. You know, that's currently where I'm at right now.
Who's somebody from the global Tamil community that you admire and why? And who's somebody that isn't Tamil that you admire and why?
Global Tamil community, good grief.
Could be anybody.
That's one.
Yeah.
I will say, because I just finished watching it, like I watched a show that she was in. Purna Jagannathan is one of those South Asian Tamil actors that I didn't realize how much work she had done before I'd seen her in what I've seen her in. Because she was in that show, Never Have I Ever. And I was like, where have I seen her before? And then I went through her IMDb and I was like, whoa, lots
She's the
of
mom,
stuff.
right?
She's the mum, yeah.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I never thought that, you know, we don't have massive Tamil actors to look up to in Hollywood. You know, we only have like people like Purna Jagannathan who are like been active for years, and then we only see them in one big thing, and then there's like, you know, sort of working really, really hard, super consistently. And I appreciate that, because more than doing one really big role, I feel like consistency is one of those things that not a lot of actors have. And she's been so consistent from any role that she does. You can tell that she's put the same amount of work into every single role, big or small.
You know who's like that? He's not Tamil, but he's South Asian. I think it's Dev Patel.
Dev Patel.
So same thing as well. Like I only heard of him through like the show The Night Of, but he did he was acting like 10 years before that, doing plays and like
Slumdog Millionaire. You didn't see that?
Yeah, I saw
I
that.
thought everyone saw that. Yeah. Yeah, he's another great one as well. He's very consistent, and they've gotten really good names for themselves in Hollywood due to their consistency.
Sorry,
And
not Dev Patel. He didn't do The Night Of, did he? I thought it was somebody else.
Are you thinking of
Sound of Metal? He did Sound of Metal recently.
Are you thinking of Riz Ahmed?
Riz Ahmed, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
not Dev Patel. Riz Ahmed, yeah. So The Night Of was his big break, but he was doing like all these obscure like plays and all this stuff before.
He did like indie films, like things that no one had ever heard of. Yeah, I saw him in a few of those, and I was like, brown person. You know when your brown person alert goes off and you're like, brown person. I see a brown person. Who is that brown person?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think consistency, yeah. Actors who are really consistent give such a good name to us.
Yes.
In like Hollywood, they give us such a like sort of good reputation that, you know, I'm currently leaning on Aussies having a good like, you know, they have a really, really good rapport with people in Hollywood.
Yes.
Just Aussies in general. I don't know why they love us for some reason. And I'm like, okay, hi, I'm also an Australian. Which is the other thing, because many people don't assume that I'm an Australian. They usually think I'm from the UK. And then
your accent's very Australian though.
I know. Yeah. I was going to say, how do you not? Come on. And what ends up happening is that once you tell them you're an Australian, they kind of have to, you see the cogs of there are brown people in Australia go through their head, because they've only seen like Hugh Jackman and Chris Hemsworth and Nicole Kidman, and they're like, oh, brown Australians. Oh, yeah, okay. You sound Australian. And you're like, yes, I do sound Australian. Thanks.
So who's somebody that's not Tamil that you admire?
Oh, that's another good one. I would say, my brain hurts. I would say that there is uh, what is her name? She's not Tamil, but she is South Asian. And
What are you thinking of? Give me some clues. Let's play charades here.
great. Um, she was, I think she's BIPOC when more I think about it. And she's a very well-known in Australia actress who went overseas. Geraldine Vishwanathan, thank you. She's an young Aussie actor. And
Okay. Oh,
she's,
yes, yes, yes. I watched
yeah,
a couple of her films at TIFF, actually.
you did. Okay, awesome. And she was someone who
She's Tamil as
was,
well.
I think is
She's
she
Tamil.
half?
She's
Okay,
half
I think
Tamil,
she's
yeah.
half, yeah, she's
Yeah.
half Tamil. Well, that doesn't count, does it?
Okay, it's half the answer. Half the answer.
It's
So,
half the answer. We'll take it. We'll take it. I really enjoy her work because she's in comedy. And I love it
yes.
when I see brown people in comedy. I'm like, yes.
She's funny, yeah. I've seen
Yeah,
before.
she's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing her in like Blockers or something and in the cinemas.
Yes.
And I remember I get super excited when I see brown people at the cinema. I get like I have my little popcorn and I'm like, look, she's brown.
So you must love what's his name? Oh my gosh. He's American. He had his own show. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I'm so bad with names. He had his own talk show. Brown guy,
Hassan,
Hassan. Yeah. So you must have
Hassan
loved.
Minaj. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Did
I
you
do
like?
love Hassan
Yeah.
Minaj. I just love it when anyone brown steps up and does comedy on that. Like it was like political comedy, like
He's intelligent, smart. I like that. Like I like
he's
I like a bit of both.
intelligent, funny.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's kind of he's doing that thing where he makes it obvious that he's got like he's a brown person with a brain,
Hmm.
but also a brown person with a brain that's funny.
Yes.
And that is my top tier favorite level of brown people comedy because often they expect us to sound dumb sometimes when we try
Hmm.
to be funny. And I'm like, but if reality, brown people funny is 90% of the time really witty. It's you having been like studying super hard for no reason for like 20 years. And then somebody makes a joke and you can make a really intelligent answer to it.
Yes.
And so I really enjoyed that that's his brand of comedy because it makes me feel better about my own brand of comedy.
Got it.
I'm like, good, intelligent brown people comedy, more of that, please.
Yes. Well, that's a kind of a good segue into the final part of the conversation. It's a game I like to call Creator Confessions. So it's meant to kind of be a speed round. I'm going to just say a bunch of statements. You're going to give me first answer that pops into your mind. You ready?
Oh boy, here we go. Deep dive into my brain. Let's go.
Favorite Tamil food?
Oh, crab curry. My mom's crab curry.
Something that scares you.
The future.
Favorite show you're watching?
Oh, Money Heist. Is that what it's called? I just
Yes.
started it. Yeah.
I watched season one. I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to stick with it.
Ooh,
A place you're itching to travel to after the pandemic is over.
New York.
Fellow Tamil creator you want to give a shout out to.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh no. There's a DOP who's Australian. His name is Srini, and he's really doing a great job getting us in front of the scenes from behind the scenes. So good on him.
Favorite film of all time.
Oh God, why would you do that to me? I'm gonna go with OK Kan Money. It's a Mani Ratnam film. That
Okay,
one I watch at least once a year.
I love Mani Ratnam films. I think
Yeah.
when I was young, I either watched Rajinikanth movies for obvious reasons and Mani Ratnam films because they were just so different.
Such taste. He had taste.
Favorite childhood memory?
um, my parents coming to see me in the school play and not understanding a thing, but being in the front row, so I could see them not understanding a thing.
Pet peeve?
Damp socks. I don't
Damp
know.
socks?
Damp socks
Oh,
because it's
damn
winter
socks.
here. Yeah.
Such a strange answer, but I love it.
I know.
If you knew that you're going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would have.
Oh, that I didn't see all of my international friends before I went.
A person or celebrity that you look up to.
Oh God, we'll go with Purna Jagannathan because I want to get to that level.
age you want to retire by. And when I say retire, my definition is ownership of time. So not like the traditional definition, but the age when you can do what you want when you want.
I don't want that to be too old. Let's say 40.
And it's kind of another celebrity question, but phrased differently. So a celebrity whose life you want to experience for just one day.
Shah Rukh Khan.
Mm,
I
good
want to
answer.
know.
And finally, a public service announcement you want to leave with our audience. It can just be, some final thoughts around being a creator or an actor, specific kind of advice, whatever you want to leave them with.
Okay, I would say that your life is in your own hands more than you think it is, and to not put it in the hands of too many other people.
Love it. I know that seemed to be a theme of some of your answers. So that
Yeah.
was great. Thank you so much, Ruby, for jumping on the podcast.
Thank you for having
Um,
me.
for anybody that's listening that kind of enjoyed your story and maybe want to connect with you to kind of pick your brain or just, I don't know, just connect in general, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Oh, slide into my Instagram DMs. I actually respond to everyone except creepy people. So
What's a
if you're
creepy
not creepy,
what's a creepy
creepy
person?
people, those randoms who are like, show bobs and vagina, and you're like, fantastic. Nice to see you too.
So there you go. Slide into your DMs and she'll respond to you. Great. Well, thank you again, Ruby, for kind of jumping on. Really excited to kind of see where your trajectory is headed. Maybe in the next 3, 4 years, we'll see you either in North America or just blow up in Australia, just because that's how the
Thank
world's.
you. That's the
And
dream.
and hopefully, maybe you'll do a comedy show before you get into acting. You could maybe do like a tour or something. I think you could do
Ooh,
well.
that would be something, wouldn't it?
Also, thank you again, and thank you for the audience for always tuning in, giving your feedback, and look forward to the next episode.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me.